Okay, hello and welcome back to episode 2 of Bitcoin Cash podcast with me, Jeremy, and I've got Jet today. Jet, say hello.
Hello, hello.
So yeah, obviously we did the last episode last week, and then it was pretty well received. Got a few subs, got a few donations as well too, which was pretty cool. So I think we're just. I thought I'd do another one. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I talked about last week that I've been in Bitcoin since 2013. Jet, give me the rundown, man. How did you get into crypto? How did it all start?
So it's weird because I had heard about it like when I was a kid, right? I'm only 23, so I heard about it when I was a teenager and really couldn't. I
Get
didn't have any
involved.
money to my name to begin with, but there was no interest in me to go and read about it or do anything with it. But when, as an adult, I started an artisan e-liquid company, and I don't know, I wanted to start investing in things, but I didn't want to deal with middlemen for the most part. So people had directed me towards cryptocurrencies and stuff. And I had paid a little bit of attention, but I didn't really put any money into it until it was like right before the Bitcoin Cash split.
Okay.
I wasn't even aware that there was really two ideological sides either. I was just like, oh, cryptocurrency, cool. I had Exodus as a wallet, and I was like, I'll just get a bunch of them, and this will be neat. So I got a little Bitcoin. I think I put like $100 into it or something like that, and then just moving it like from exchange to wallet, and then just other wallets trying to test out like how do you actually use this. Like it was my first experience with cryptocurrency, and I was kind of learning on my own. So yeah, it was not a really pleasant experience. But I was like, I don't know, this is really this seemed like the perfect fit in my mind, even with a crappy user experience. So I kind of stuck along with it. And then it was probably like a week or two after the fork, found out it was a thing. And I still had, I think I was interested in like XMR or Monero
Canary,
at
yeah.
the time, but I didn't have any. So I just like took all of the Bitcoin that I had, put it into Bitcoin Cash, and then heavily advertised that as a business I wanted to accept Bitcoin Cash because, again, it just seemed like the perfect fit, only without the bad user experience.
Yeah,
Um, and I think even for like the entire year, maybe year and a half, that as a business I was accepting Bitcoin Cash, I maybe convinced like 2 friends to buy products with Bitcoin Cash, but there was no adoption. So I was in a couple Facebook groups around cryptocurrency, or revolving around cryptocurrency, and they'd kind of directed me to online communities, and I was invited to I think it was called the Bitcoin Cash Fund Discord channel at the time, and they kind of pushed me to start hosting meetups, and that was really when, yeah, I feel like it was like and that was only like 2 or 3 months in, but since I started doing those meetups, I was really just like all in. As a large part of my focus is now cryptocurrency related.
yeah. Well, I mean, people get sucked down the rabbit hole, and I think that is the phrase I used last time, and I think that's so true. Like I've had a bit of a break from it, but when I first got into it, I was so obsessed with it, and I think that's one of the things that just shows that it is going to change the world, right? Because that like there's just things that are that interesting to that many people for like that sustained period of time and stuff like that. It's like Pokemon Go, I think of, is like the classic thing of, okay, there was already Pokemon, and then there was Pokemon Go, and it became this huge like viral hit for what it was, like 3 months or something, and everybody was
Yeah.
playing it, and then it just died, right? I don't know whether or not you can still play it now, but it's basically not relevant, right? Like there's a big difference between something that's good once and something that's like can sustain itself.
Yeah, 100%. I
So
think I actually still see people like playing Pokemon Go, but I also like take public transit. So, you know, certain demographics kind of fit.
yeah, yeah. I guess I don't know. I've been in isolation, so I haven't seen I haven't seen what's going on. Maybe it's still kicking off. I don't know. I guess it depends.
It
Every different.
certainly died down a lot, but
Yeah, yeah. It had its like big moment, and I think that's something like with as well with like crypto is already pretty niche, even though it's grown enormously like since where it was, and then if you think now Bitcoin Cash it is really the underdog, I'd say, in the whole versus Bitcoin battle. And I find it really interesting that you said about there was that two like ideologies or anything like that, because I feel like that was a later addition. You know, there even at the time of the split, I don't think there really was two ideologies. You know, this whole like Bitcoin being a store of value and all that shit. That's sort of like a post rationalization that they've kind of added in, right? Because that was one of the beautiful things about it in the early days, was that like when it was just there was just one Bitcoin, was everybody was on the same page, right? So even though it was a small community, it still like grew regularly and stuff like that, because everybody was pulling in the same direction. And then with the split, it's had its like ups and downs, right? So the upside is that obviously it shows that, okay, if there's altcoins or whatever, like if Bitcoin is facing a massive threat, it can maybe just splinter down into like smaller versions which can iterate faster, you know, to stay ahead of the game kind of thing. But then on the other hand, it did also just completely wrecked all the momentum of the community, and Bitcoin Cash, especially being the smaller side of that, I really feel like it's got to work its way back up. But you know, I'm confident. I'm confident. I don't know about you, but you know.
um, I I'm not too concerned. Like, yeah, price movements make me happy, sure, but like, for the majority of my participation in the cryptocurrency ecosystem, I've been either down or just barely broken even. So it's like I've like written it off in my mind already. Like, I'll ride the wave to zero if need be. Otherwise, like, it's still useful to me, and that's what's like, I could still pay my bills. I just as a little experiment, I was like, I'm gonna live the entire month of January off of Bitcoin Cash,
Fuck yeah.
and I can't do like direct with it, but I have managed to pay all of my bills with it. So like, what I'll do is I'll pay with things with my credit card, and then pay that credit card bill off with Bitcoin Cash.
Man,
And that's been pretty.
that's actually sick, and I think that's a good thing. You know, like that's what I'm trying to get in that mindset as well too at the moment of like. I've got maybe some more work coming up and stuff like that, and it's sort of like a side gig kind of thing. It's going to be like, pay me in Bitcoin Cash, man. Bitcoin Cash, or this is not happening. And then the same thing as well with my current work. I've asked them about it too. Just sowing the seeds, you know, or maybe 10% or 15% or just 100%. I don't know, whatever. But we're just trying to get them to that step. But you know, I think you really need to get into that mindset of like it's supposed to be an independent economy, and even though the hype and the price speculation stuff drives a lot of the adoption because it gets media attention, so that's a good thing. But on the other hand, it does also mean that, yeah, you sort of need to be in it, like you need to get past that and get to like, what is the actual, you know, point of this, and then the price kind of follows on afterwards. So yeah, I guess so. Yeah, let's just like rock and roll with that. So let's just check in. So this was the stats I just pulled up earlier, but let's just load up CoinMarketCap and see what is the actual latest price. But Bitcoin basically down a little bit. Oh, looks like Bitcoin.
Is it a good time to buy?
I think it's a fucking good time to buy it. I mean, it's always a good time to buy Bitcoin in my mind, but you know, or Bitcoin Cash anyway. But Bitcoin 32,000, Bitcoin Cash 397. I don't know. It dipped down. It was like 360, something like that, or maybe it was even a little bit lower. Maybe it was like 350. I don't know, but yeah, definitely dropped off a bit. But I think that was more just like the whole crypto took a bit of a hit. It wasn't like specifically like Bitcoin Cash doing shit. And let's see here. Give this bad boy a thumbs up. I'm feeling good about Bitcoin Cash. Yeah, 61% good. Ooh, that's a little on the low side. Maybe people not believing as much right now. But okay, so we got 0.012 BTC, so down a little bit, about 75 to 1. Yeah, you know, funny that I bring that up as the first thing, even though I'm like, yeah, the price doesn't matter. All right, so here's the more exciting part: is that the transactions are still kicking off. We got here on Coin.dance, 323,000 transactions for Bitcoin, 235,000 Bitcoin Cash. So this gap is getting pretty small, eh? Like, you know, in like real world usage,
So,
you know.
um, I see there's some concern about like where that is, like the transaction volume is coming
Yeah.
from. Are you concerned at all that it's like mostly one platform?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I take it as a point. Like, I mean, well, we're gonna have a look in a second at like some of the other metrics. Like I did last week, I looked at the USD volume as well, and you could see like that was growing as well. So it wasn't just like a lot of people spamming. But I don't even think it's not even necessarily a big problem if it's like this read.cash or noise.cash doing like most of the transaction volume. I don't see that as a huge problem because in the long term, obviously, it's not sustainable or super like positive or anything like in terms of, you know, creating a sustainable scene. But on the other hand, like it starts with one kind of thing, right? And it's actually better to have one thing that is killing it and is like actually creating a lot of traction than to have like 4 or 5 things that are kind of so and not really getting anywhere. Because on an exponential, you know, if one thing is really kicking off, that's a lot bigger, and then even if that's driving most of it, like to start, then that gets people's eyeballs, and then, you know, other things kind of like fragment off from there. So yeah, I'm not super concerned about it. You know, it's always better to have
So
more transactions than not, basically.
are you aware of like memo.cash or memo?
Yeah, because there's like 3 or 4. That's what I haven't figured out as well too. Is there's like memo.cash, there's like member.cash, and there's like whatever it's called, noise.cash and read.cash. So it's like, I don't know whether they're really that different or whether it's just.
And then there's also Block Press, which I believe is like an open source thing now.
Okay, let's have a look at that too then. Okay, decentralized social networking. So this is what these are. It's just more like variations on the idea of sort of integrating payments with like social media, right? As well as some sort of it's, you know, uncensorable kind of angle, right?
Yeah. So if memory serves me correctly, memo.cash was first, and their whole thing was like you're essentially packing up your posts or your activity on a social media network into an op return
like output
code. And so not only does that allow like developers to build whatever social media platform they want where they just tap into the blockchain, but it also means that like a front end could choose to censor certain things, but the foundation of it is uncensorable. So like anyone can still have access to messages or like prove certain things from like verified signatures and things like that. But yeah, on those platforms, Memo and Member, everything, as far as I know, happens like on chain. Whereas I don't think that's the case with Read or Noise.cash.
Yeah, I mean, like, because that's yeah. Then it sort of gets into like, you know, how much does Bitcoin Cash really need to be a sort of like, no, I don't want to say layer 2, but like an extended kind of thing, right? Where you have like Ethereum is just like gone all out on, oh, we're going to have all these smart contracts. Like, they have so much shit, you can't even really follow what's going on, to be honest, half of the time. But basically, they have all these like grand ideas, and they're going to make all these apps and the like DAO and like whatever other stuff they've got going on. And it's like, okay, obviously never it's going to be like McDonald's are going to be like, oh, yep, you can pay for your burger with this, because it's going to be like, there's way too much crap going on, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think fundamentally it's just like you have to keep the concept of it to it's not even necessarily well, okay, when people say means of exchange, exchanging what, right? Well, they say it's value, but in this case you can have like worthless or valueless data, right? Because that value is a perspective thing. So it's not just means of exchanging value in terms of like a monetary sense, but also like just pure data. It's like just another communication protocol as far as like fundamentally as far as
Yeah. And I mean, but I think a lot of it did come down to this sort of it's sort of like a VC investor type mentality, right? Where people are sort of like trying to be the next most hyped crypto by having the newest feature, and that's not sustainable, right? Like in my mind, the killer app of cryptocurrency is payments. Like that, okay, other stuff will come on, but because obviously people who get into this stuff are generally on the sort of far end of the innovator spectrum in terms of like how they want to push the boundaries and try new things and stuff. They get into Bitcoin, they're like, this is the sickest thing ever, and then before too long, that's old school, right? They moved on to the next thing and the next thing, and like, whereas actually the majority of the population is still like way back here, right? And even just getting them onto like payments is going to be the biggest fucking like hurdle. So yeah, I mean, I think it is definitely something that I want to do a whole show about, like in the future. But that what you're saying about Bitcoin being sort of like a communication medium, the principles of money and the whole idea of the what's it called, the generals problem, like the two generals problem, and the Byzantine generals problem. Yeah, exactly, and the double spending and all that. Like that was really the fundamental issue, breakthrough of Bitcoin, and then everybody's sort of built on it in their own ways, right? But so like in that sense, I sort of feel like maybe Bitcoin Cash, it kind of just needs to get payments right, and if you have these other like tokens or like social networking or whatever, that's kind of cool, but really the payments and the limited supply, like for creating a new economy, to me is the biggest part of it. And you can see like with Bitcoin SV that they sort of forked off, they're doing their own thing, but they were just like, they're basically like making like some sort of Dropbox, right, where everybody was uploading these like files onto, stored in the blockchain forever and all that.
I don't know if it's just my own bias, but I haven't found any reason to believe that participation in BSV, if not for like the ironic meme, is just like cult worship stuff. Like it's very like exclusive, but it's weird because they're saying that they want to make Bitcoin accessible the world over, right? But we need to do this right. That's why we need to have everything on board, But then also like anyone that doesn't follow whatever their governments are saying, like we gotta target these people, we gotta go after these people.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole, we're gonna prove Craig is Satoshi by law, and that's an interesting angle to take as well. So it just seems like, and I saw an amazing post today, which I thought this was genius, but to me it's like a self-defeating thing, and it's that it was comparing Craig to Jesus. First off, just want to make that
already starting off strong here, yeah.
But it was along the lines of like, do you think if Craig proved the way that people are asking that he is Satoshi, that people would believe him, and then said, when Jesus resurrected from the dead, they killed him and nailed him to a cross.
Craig's like looking over his shoulder. He's like, "Oh shit, they're coming after me!" Like the pitchforks, the Romans with the spears,
It's like, so it's how much of Bitcoin is faith-based, and how much are people like just religious extremists?
I mean, it's an interesting idea. Like, I think, from my point of view, I think one of the most underrated aspects of Bitcoin was the fact that Satoshi, whether willingly or not, right, that's up for debate, that's probably a separate topic or whatever, but for any, for their own reasons or not, just went quiet and just gone out. Why? Because then the community just had to figure it out on their own, and it meant there was no like figurehead, like for me, that's one of the big problems with Ethereum or any of these other networks. Like, even if Ethereum is decentralized in theory, in practice it's like, at least from the outside, I mean, Vitalik says, I want to put in this, and everyone goes, genius idea, and they all put it in, you know, or he's obviously going to have a lot of sway as well as a lot of the money from being, you know, one of the early people in it. And a lot of the other cryptos are the same, right? Whoever's sort of, whether in theory they're not, but in practice, basically they're running the show, right? And Bitcoin doesn't have that. And I think that just makes it so much more immune to that sort of, you know, reasoning by authority type thing.
I think Bitcoin Cash is actually the most like perfect example of Bitcoin not having that. Every time there's been any weird like consolidation of influence and power, that figurehead has been cut off.
Well, because people fork off deliberately. I would say it's for better. I mean, you sort of got to have some sort of leadership in the community, right? Like Roger Ver, he's a huge, you know, he's like got a lot of, I'm sure what he says, like it makes an impact, right? But at the same time, yeah, you don't want it, you want to have it, you know, decentralized, right? It's got to be spread around. You want some people as sort of community figures, you want the devs, you know, you want some of the people who are the big like business holders or whatever, you know, you sort of want to have that spread around, which of course makes agreeing to anything quite difficult, which is the whole Bitcoin, you know, mantra of like decentralized consensus, you know. So yeah, I don't know. I think you're right though. I think Bitcoin Cash definitely seems to have the best spread, and maybe over time, you know, that will allow it to pull ahead of other communities, because every idea has to live on its merits rather than sort of by decree, right? So yeah.
Well, just in like the node implementation diversity alone, I mean, I'm not well versed in this, but I know it's the highest or the most diverse in the SHA-256 like mining algorithm, but I'm not sure if it's the case for all proof of work coins. But it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, that's so like for people who don't know, you know, I mean, I do intend this podcast to be quite like, you know, raw, but you know, you just sort of try and keep people on it if they then, you know, their first ever time finding out about crypto. Like basically when you're running on your network of a cryptocurrency, right, you have people running the software that checks all the transactions and everything like that, called the node software. And so with Bitcoin, the main Bitcoin, or not Hatecoin, the main Bitcoin, with BTC Core, BTC, they have like 99.9% of people running it are running it on one software, right? So if there was a bug in that software, or if, you know, the developers who are in charge of that, if they have a certain agenda or a certain idea or whatever, then that just sort of,
or if they get compromised.
Yeah, exactly. Or if, like, I don't know, yeah, whether the government buys them out, or whether if there was, yeah, any sort of like issues there, or you know, even just if they were like hacked unknowingly, and then somebody was putting up new releases of Bitcoin and everybody just downloaded it without checking it, like all those kind of things, right? It just creates a central point of failure. And so in Bitcoin Cash, because the history of when it split and there was different people who wanted to do it different ways, but they all had a bit of a central idea, they've sort of built a few different versions. So it seems like the main ones right now, so Bitcoin Unlimited is 42% of the nodes, Bitcoin ABC is about 29.6, so nearly 30%, BCHN, which is Bitcoin Cash node, that's about 25%, and then you've got BCHD, Knuth, Bitcoin Verde, Flowy, the hub, Bitcoin XT, and other, all with like, you know, under 2%, under 1% in most cases. So those ones maybe need to get a bit more traction. But even just having those three, like unlimited, ABC, and node, yeah, that is already like healthy diversity in terms of, you know, who's coordinating things, and obviously they all have to agree on any upgrade, right? Which means that it's probably a good idea if it's been independently checked in those different cases, right? Okay, so yeah, let's just power on a bit. So with these transactions then, so yeah, this is kind of like over this 3 months, it's been going, oh fuck, I gotta make it so this is like actually fairly visible. But yeah, something else that I was just thinking about, looking at, holy cow, this like preview thing, it always just flicks through. I want to turn that off. How do I not do that? Maybe we can just run it like this. Why is it, am I touching my keyboard? Something, I don't know why it keeps rolling forward. Maybe it's because I'm playing around with my mouse. So yeah, basically like, yeah, so here's some of the like USD volume for BCH, and I also put Ethereum on this graph, which is the red line, and then Bitcoin Cash is in the yellow. It's probably kind of hard to see, but basically Bitcoin Cash is doing about the same amount of actual like USD dollars as Ethereum, which I think is pretty significant, given that when you look at the like coin market cap, you know, like Ethereum's a monster compared, you know, let's see here, 153 billion versus what, 7 billion. So I mean that's a lot of real world usage, like by proportion, you know, I think. So like that sort of gives me confidence that it's not all people spamming like 1 cent on noise.cash, you know. And then another thing I've got here as well is that I was looking at, I saw somebody suggest one of the Reddit threads, so CoinDays destroyed. I don't know how familiar you are with that.
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, but like for the listeners, basically the idea is that if you had like one person who just sent, you know, $1 in Bitcoin, or even $100 or maybe 1,000, if they sent or $100,000 of Bitcoin, but they just sent it to themselves over and over and over and over again, it would look like you had a lot of USD going around on your network, but actually there's no real economic output, right? But the CoinDays destroyed is basically that if you have a coin in your wallet and it sits there for 1 day and then you send $5, well, that counts for $5. But if it sits there for 2 days and then you send it, then it's 2 days times $5 is $10. And if it was 3 days, it would be 15, and so on, right? So the amount of the relevance of the transaction is the size multiplied by how long since you moved those coins. So it gives more weight to ones that haven't just been recently spammed around in a circle. And like you can see, it's a pretty inconsistent sort of pattern here, but basically recently there has been, you know, significant spikes in the CoinDays destroyed as well too. So yeah, it doesn't really seem like a lot of people just sending around some tiny pool of coins, you know. Yeah, so like with the one, okay, so the next thing I've got here is, so I've been watching the transaction stream pretty heavily, and let me see if I can just pull it up here on the side. But I took these 3 little like GIF clips of TX Street as the week was going on, and I just found it so interesting to watch, because you can see like people are very visual, right? So you can see the exact difference. So if we have a look here, so this is sort of like the 2 transactions per second, which is like a lot of the time what Bitcoin Cash is doing, right? And then if I load up the like 24 per second, which is what we've been having some of with when noise.cash, when it really, if it spams all its transactions at once, you get more like this. And you could just see like instantly how many people in the world would have to be using Bitcoin Cash, you know, for it to be constantly doing that kind of volume. But I think that's where we're going, right? If the trend continues, if the growth continues, then what is sort of exceptional at the moment to have 23 or 24 you know, transactions a second, it will just become the regular. And even if that's small amounts, you know, that adds up, I think.
So the question is like, how long?
How long for it to take?
What's the time horizon?
I don't know. People struggle with you know, thinking in exponentials, I think. So well, we can even have a bit of a look. If we have a look back at our graph that we had there, but because it's like there's just no growth for so freaking long, right? And then, God damn, now I'm struggling to, oh, that's right, I need to, oh wow. I'm doing a terrible job of getting this graph to load up what I'm thinking of. But yeah, like if you can see like this kind of growth, you know, from under 100K, like 50K to nearly 300K in a month. So in that, you know, even if it was like a linear growth, this is like 0.5 transactions a second or less, and this is like 2. So that would be even in like a year if it was linear. And if it's faster than linear, you know, if it's exponential, which it's more likely to be, hopefully, if the growth continues, then, you know, maybe it could be like 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah.
You know, which goes by fast, right? Like crypto's a pretty young space, but at the same time, I mean, the amount of change in especially in a pandemic world where everybody's just sitting at home, doing not much, like just twiddling their thumbs, 6 months from here to there. Doesn't sound all that long. So I think that would be a pretty optimistic case if in 6 months it was doing 24 transactions per second. But I can't see how if it was getting to that kind of volume consistently, how people, the market would not start to think like, there's something going on here, right? This is not just like, even if it's 1 cent transactions, I think if Bitcoin Cash takes over the use case of those smaller transactions, it can work up to the bigger ones, right? Where Bitcoin can't really do the opposite. It can't be like, we are the gold standard for the $1 million payments, and then slowly trickle down into small. Things don't work like that, right? People start off with, they adopt based on small amounts, and then they kind of move on, move on up from there. All right, so this is like the theme that I sort of saw on the subreddit this week, was this kind of grassroots adoption happening, right? Which was, like in the early days when it was all, like I was saying, when everybody was on the same page and stuff like that, the really exciting things you'd see on the subreddit would more often not be, we hit a new price high, right? That would be in a small window where everybody was hyped up about that. But the more interesting thing would be somebody like, look, here's a picture of me at, a Bitcoin meetup, and there's like 3 people here, and they're like mind blown, that even 3 people gave a shit about Bitcoin in their city, and that like, that's how a community builds up, right? So I saw these posts of these people in like Bangkok, I think in Thailand, and like, this looks delicious as hell, by the way. I don't know what this like chocolate biscuit is, but it looks bloody good. But basically that's what that's the kind of adoption, like, because one conversation where you sit down with somebody across from them, in real life, maybe you have a drink if you're so inclined, and like the conversation you have there, it just counts for 1,000,000 times any people arguing on Reddit to each other, blah blah blah. Like, that's so easy to just switch off and just dismiss. But as when you're sitting down with real people, that like, that's the actual links of a community that make a good community, I think. So
if you can sit someone down and be like, let me send you $1, and it's like the quickest dollar they've ever received, then it's a pleasant experience. Like, they get excited about it.
And I think like that social aspect as well just really drives it home, right? Because we will do another episode about this. I have a plan for an episode about this, but the value of a currency is the community, which is not something that we intuitively think of these days, because in a fiat currency, the government just says, okay, this is it. So the community is sort of predefined, right? It's like a geographic location for the most part, and so you're born there or you move there or whatever, and you're just like, well, this is the currency, and you just use it without kind of question. But in this world of cryptocurrency, where people choose, and there is a very high opportunity cost, right? You can't just you can't have $1 both in Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, or in Australian dollars or US dollars at the same time, right? You have to, for each $1, you have to pick which one it's going to be in. Like, you can be on 2 social media networks at the same time, spamming to all your friends at once, but you can't really do that with money. Every $1 you put in one is $1 you're not putting in another one. So in that sense, the currencies are really competing to have the strongest and most vibrant and interesting and the best network of people you can trade with, so I think that's really important.
I've never heard that before, and that's like, I wish more people talked about it. That's an awesome, like, you should write that up, quote it, make boomer memes for Facebook. People will eat it, man.
That's right. Like, that's kind of part of the idea of this podcast, right? And I think that's why I say I'll definitely make it a topic for a whole episode, but just talking about that. And again, it sort of comes back to what I was saying about when before the fork, the whole Bitcoin community was on one page, and when I talked about last time about the the dominance of the currency was like 95%, and all the other altcoins were like shitters in the gutter. Part of the reason was because Bitcoin had so much energy and momentum as a community, and then once that started to fracture down, people started thinking, oh fuck this, and they went off into the other ones for like a variety of reasons. But I think the way Bitcoin Cash will outcompete Bitcoin will be by building that community, because anytime you look on our Bitcoin now, look in the Bitcoin discussion, it's all like, oh, we're gonna hodl and get like Lamborghinis or whatever. It's okay to have some of that, you can have a little bit of that, but you just don't see posts anymore like this kind of thing, like, oh, I met up with someone and we had that, or I was whatever, like somebody who just makes an artwork with like Bitcoin involved in it, or just any kind of thing, something that's not so price focused, because that draws away new users. New users come for the community. They need something that like draws them in, and it's not like we're all gonna get rich, like that. You're just like, that's a scam. Anybody knows that. If somebody's like promising you money, if the whole driver is money, rather than, oh wow, look at all this stuff that's being created, or this cool vibe, or community, or anything like that, right? So
yeah, as a little bit of like maybe foreshadowing here. I even saw that with the whole GameStop shit.
Exactly.
Like, there was the wallstreetbets Twitter account, or wallstreetbets chairman Twitter account, or some shit like that. Was like, they only control us because we use their currency, and people were making suggestions for them to use Bitcoin, obviously. But a lot of the replies were like, what, you'd pay $32,000 for one Bitcoin? Like, what's that going to do for me? And it's like this idea that you have to have the whole thing, and you're like buying it specifically to make your fiat dollars off of it. Like, having it be a club with a goal in mind definitely seems to be a better fit than, like I don't want to say like a Ponzi.
That's what it is, though. If it's always, it's just like a multi-level marketing scheme, if it's just like, that's what the people in Bitcoin now seem to be, very focused on, is just this sort of, more people in to pump the like price up, and they don't really have that understanding, again, because it was sort of lost along the way, right? And that's where I think in Bitcoin Cash, if you read on the subreddit RBTC, and you can see there are a lot of the old school people there, and because they have that attitude, and they're like, look, don't worry so much about the price, what about this cool thing or that cool thing or whatever, then over time, that spreads around to everybody else, and it becomes like that. And then when the price goes ballistic, you get a fresh wave of people who are just interested in the price. But if they come there and there's a lot of moderated voices saying, look, let's get hype about this, but also, did you know about this, or that's how people really integrate, and the thing grows. And the whole Wall Street bets, we're going to get to that, but that's like pretty quickly too, actually. It's just one or two more slides, but that's you can see that happening, right? Is that the price, like, they took this stock from what, $2 to $400 in like under a month, and the growth is just nuts. Why? Because everybody's just like hodl and diamond hands and like all their memes and stuff like that. Like, it doesn't take very much to move the price, because the price is set at the margin, right? If you have people who actually like believe in it as a vision, rather than as more like, oh, we're all here. If GameStop was all, we're just here to get rich, it wouldn't work. But because it's like, oh, we're all going to stick it to Wall Street and we all in it together, that's where the magic happens, right? So we'll get to that in a second, but I just have one more slide here that I want to bring up, of these two other like examples of this sort of like grassroots innovation. So I mean, this one's pretty cool. Again, this is just sort of like with these Hessian bags here and whatever. Again, this is just sort of like marketing and stuff, but very like passively, right? It doesn't need to be like, get Bitcoin Cash. Instead, it could be like, hey, you need a bag, or you need these books, or like whatever they're doing, use that. And then Bitcoin Cash is sort of like an add-on, or it's in there. So it's a value add. It's not like, it doesn't have to be the focus,
Yeah. Did you see the photos from, there was like a Bitcoin Cash food theme competition in the Coin Party hackathon?
No, I did not see that. Let's see if we just look that up. Like, Bitcoin party food hackathon. I didn't see that, but that sounds pretty sick. Let's see here, fintech review. Oh, here we go. BCH themed food mini game. All right, this already looks great. It's gonna make me hungry. I look at too many of these. Oh, god damn it! All right, yeah. Do you know what the link is, or like, I don't know. We could pull it up now, or whatever. Anyway, it's all right. We can always just like leave. But yeah, basically, what was the point of that though? Was that they were like integrating it into.
Yeah. So it's, so during a hackathon, just as a way to like, boost morale and whatnot, they had a little competition for, I think it was like $5 or $10 in the prize pool, where whoever had like the prettiest looking Bitcoin Cash related food item essentially got the prize.
Yeah.
And the winner was like, I think his name, you know what, I don't want to even say it just in case I'm wrong, but he made this like fruit salad with like a BCH carved into the skin of one of the fruits.
Oh man!
And it was just so pleasant looking. I don't know, made me happy.
Yeah, and it's just those cool, funny things, and it's like it's a classic of especially like a Reddit community as well, that things do sort of, it's centered around one topic, right? But it diversifies into all these random little avenues of like people making songs about that thing, or making, like artwork or food or short stories, or like, whatever, any kind of like creative expression, or hosting meetups, or like all kinds of different things. And that's just so healthy for the community. Everyone loves that shit. And it just, the more that everything just crosses over, it just naturally becomes one big thing, the stronger the community, the more enjoyable it is just to be a part of a community when you can go on the Reddit and you're like, that's awesome, I love that. Or you could take some inspiration for it yourself, So maybe, I'm sure some people see that photo and then they go out, they, cook up their own meal with like, throw a Bitcoin Cash symbol on it, post it up for some karma, or even don't, just eat it at your house, or, have it with your family, and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool, you did that, Because I like this one, right, which is this really made me laugh. Like I didn't get it the first time I looked at it, but the second time I looked at it, I was like, that's amazing. Somebody, with Monopoly, and they just put the QR codes on the like, everybody had a QR code, and then it's like, okay, now we're playing Monopoly, but with Bitcoin Cash balances. That's unreal. That'd be easy.
Easy piece, man. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's not very hard to do, right?
Little
But it's
like
just
that.
the kind of thing you would. I would never think of this in a million years, right? But like I've played Monopoly a bunch. Like my family at Christmas, every once in a while they have a Monopoly game. I just remember like my uncles, and they're just screwing you out of the money and all these like deals and stuff like that. And it just, you can incorporate Bitcoin Cash into that and have it not be a big deal, and it just adds. It's just such a small.
You can't have a cheating banker with.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. You can't be. You gotta have to make some like other sneaky moves. You gotta have your other like, phone in your pocket and just under the table be like recharging your balance or whatever. Yeah, exactly. You have to just double spend on the network. Like throw in an extra community chance card that's like this double spend attack. Like.
The most expensive Monopoly game is just people trying to, bribe the miners to move transactions.
Yeah, that's right. And I just thought it was so, because there's so many ways you can do it as well too, right? Because there's like, okay, I think the way this poster did it was with these sort of SLP, tokens. So they had their own little tokens being traded around on it. But I thought as well, like, I can't remember exactly how much money you get in Monopoly, but it's like $500 or something to start, right? You could literally just do it with that, where everybody has 500 like Satoshis or something like that, and literally it's all just the price is the price. You pay the price, and everybody just makes a new wallet for the game and just send it around, and then at the end of the day, whoever won, right? So I can just imagine this like, BCH high roller game where it's like, we're going to play Monopoly and everybody rock up with 500 BCH, and that's how we're going to do it, right? Like I could just, imagine that would be so sick, like. Yeah, that would be like some Casino Royale type shit, like, let's go, and it's all like, for real stakes, or like with poker as well. Like, I'm kind of interested in poker. There's you know, there's people making like, you know, blockchain.poker and stuff like that, you know, where, and it could, you know, just adjust to whatever your budget is, right? If you want to play for $1 Bitcoin Cash because it's so divisible, so it's not really a problem. And if you want to
Yeah, they've got really low stakes tables, so you can, I think with like as low as like 10 cents you can play around poker.
Exactly. So all those things, they just add up. They're so cool. But anyway, that kind of stuff, that gives me a lot of faith in the community when you see a lot of posts like this. So yeah, shout out to the user who did this Monopoly board. Like, all the links are in here. So you know, I'm gonna upload the slides as well with on bitcoincashpodcast.com. So if people are watching this and they're like, oh, that's pretty cool, and they want to check it out, you know, see what the community reaction was, it was all there. So yeah, but let's go on here with the main topic, I think, for today, which is this Wall Street bets versus Wall Street, which has really just kicked off. I mean, obviously it's been going for like a month or a year probably from the exact beginning, but it's really just, you know, capturing the public imagination, I'd say, in the last 48 hours. You know, have you been much involved in this?
No, I stayed at the sidelines until it blew up yesterday, and then I was just like, ha.
But you knew about it earlier? Like, you heard about this on the grapevine?
I heard about it's just like, it was still within this week, maybe like 2-3 days at best. Man. But yesterday was like, okay,
it's kicking
this
off.
Isn't just like a joke anymore. Yeah, it's trending on.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh well, I'm jealous because I feel like I'm out of the loop because I only really heard about it like yesterday morning, I think, and then I looked into it yesterday afternoon. And like, yeah, full disclosure for the podcast listeners, I did pick up a little bit of GME and also what's the other one, AMC. Just a small amount because I was just like, I got to be part of this. This is financial history right here, right? I don't even care if it all goes to zero. Like, I'm having no problems hodling because I'm just going to go to sleep and forget about it, you know. But I love that stuff, right? It's a big part of why I'm in Bitcoin to begin with, and just all that, like, so many momentous events in finance, like with Mt. Gox and all this like stuff that happened in Bitcoin. And to me, this is just the exact same thing. It's like you got to be involved. Like, it's worth it for the story just to have one of those stocks, even if it goes to complete shit. And if it doesn't and it kicks off, hell yeah, you know. So yeah, I guess we'll just go through it a little bit. But first, I just want to throw this one in. This is me on Wall Street, like a few years back. So I just wanted to establish some credibility to the listeners that you know, might be an authoritative source on this. Not that I'm an expert in stock trading or anything, but I just thought that was funny. But yeah, so basically, for people who don't know, it all started with this company GameStop. Have you ever been to GameStop or bought anything from them, or like? Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's, I mean, not in many years, but as a kid, I went to GameStop pretty frequently.
Damn, because I'd literally never heard of them like until this whole event, right? Like, I'm a bit of a, you know, like I know these kind of stores, right? They had some in Australia when I was a kid. They had EB Games, which is basically like the same thing, right? It's like that store where they're gonna have like, you know, computer mice and like all the different video games and like the, you know, light up keyboards and shit, and then probably also like some Pokemon cards or so, you know, some like mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, they're pretty well.
Yeah. So I had anyway, there's this place, GameStop, I guess mostly in North America then, and they were basically just a dying business. As you say, like, people would not be going to them as much now because who buys, like, now there's Steam and whatever, like, who buys physical copies of games? Like, probably grandmothers for their kids, like, buy, you know, like their grandkids they buy. But no, but yeah, anyway, this company, you know, and they were basically down on their luck and like pretty much probably going to go bust, and some hedge fund called Melvin Capital saw this opportunity and was like, fuck yeah, we're going to short the hell out of this stock. So for people who don't know necessarily too much about shorting or finance or what it involves, basically the idea is that if somebody else has a stock, like in GameStop, and I think the price is going to go down, I can say, hey, lend me your stock and then I'll sell it and then when the price goes down, I'll buy it back, so then I can give you back your stock, but also I've made a profit because I sold it at the higher price and then I bought it back at the lower price. And obviously the problem there is that if I'm wrong, if the price goes up, then at some point I have to realize, I fucked up, like I got it wrong, and I have to buy back the share at a higher price to give it back to you, and that's my own loss, as well as the longer I wait to do it, potentially the more it goes up, as well as I have to pay you for the interest of borrowing your stock over time, right? So what happened was that this hedge fund had shorted GameStop at more than 140%. So of all the shares, I think there's something like there's about 51 million shares or something like that publicly traded, and they have shorted well over that, like more than 60 or 70 million stocks. So even if they could buy all the stocks and hand them all back, they still would, be potentially liable for having to buy back more of these stocks. So yeah, like, and then that leads into a thing called potentially, like, so what Reddit figured out, right, is that they found this information that they had 140% shorts on this company, which I guess had a bit of a feel-good story because like they all bought games there growing up as a kid or whatever, and they thought, wait a second, if we just pump the price of this stock up, if we all buy up the stock and we don't sell it, then the hedge fund at some point they have to buy them off us. But if we don't sell, then the price just keeps going higher and higher and higher, and we all get rich. And it sort of quickly turned into a bit of a a fuck you to Wall Street, and a bit of like a Occupy Wall Street round 2, right? And just kicked off like that.
It was a so much better version of an Occupy Wall Street. Like, Occupy Wall Street didn't do shit compared to this.
That's right, yeah.
People are panicking right now, right? Like,
yeah.
Get liquidated.
Yeah, it's completely different. I mean, like, when my mate told me about this, when I first heard about it, I had this sort of skeptical reaction, right? Because even though I'm big on all this stuff, and when I heard about it, I thought, it sounds like Occupy Wall Street, because they all rocked up or whatever, they stood around and they like were salty outside a building, whatever. And then a couple of weeks later, like, they all went home, right? Like, actually nothing changed, really. Like, everyone got to feel good. Yeah, we stuck it to the bankers, but really, like, jack shit changed, right? And this time it's the complete opposite, where the hedge fund have been basically outmaneuvered and they're on the hook, and at the moment they're basically just handing out cash to the actual investors. So it's like a true revenge of the people versus Wall Street, because it's hitting them on the metric that Wall Street cares about, which is the money, right?
Did you see any of the thing with like Robinhood or?
Yeah, I've got some slides about that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But go on.
I'm curious. I haven't heard much of it.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll give a bit of a summary and get some of your thoughts. But yeah, basically, so and like, just to sort of give a bit more of a sense of what the real, like, I'm going to say issue in inverted commas, but is that for the hedge fund, because they're now in this potentially short squeeze position where the stock price is rocketing up and they need to buy some back, which then not only rockets the price up further, but it encourages everybody else piling in on Reddit or in the world, right? Any investors. And it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher, and eventually they run out of money and they go bankrupt, right? So this company, Melvin Capital, they've already down like more than $2.5 billion in like a couple of days, and I think they've only got 12.5 billion. So at some point they're just going to go bust, and then when they go bust, then their broker is on the hook, and if the broker goes bust, then the bank is on the hook. This is not the kind of debt that you can say, oh, our company failed, like, sucks to be you. It's like it transfers down the line, and potentially if this really blows up in the next like couple of days, even more than it already has, then it might trigger like a financial crisis, like 2008 style banks meltdown. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens there. But basically, one of the problems is for the hedge fund is that usually they get in this situation and it's them and another hedge fund, right? The other hedge fund is the one that's got them over a barrel. So then once they're fucked, they can go to the other hedge fund and sort of sit down with some lawyers, mediate it out a little bit. Like, look, okay, we're going to have to pay you guys a ton of money to get out of this, but like, what's the price, basically, like, so that we don't go bust, or can we convince you that if you melt down the whole banking system, like, that would be bad for you and for us, like that kind of a thing. But they can't do that in this case, right? Because they can't like go to Reddit and post and be like, hey guys, do you reckon you could just ease up on us or whatever? It's like, not a fucking chance, right?
They double down.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like this fanatical, sort of like decentralized mob. They can't negotiate with that mob under really any circumstances. So that's kind of even why it's even more like shocking, right? So here we go. So I've got this guy here, deep fucking value, classic Reddit username.
That's a post from a year ago, right?
Yeah. Oh no, this is one from recently, but this is showing he's got like 33 million in profits, because basically he started this all 1 year ago, like you're saying, where he said like this stock is way undervalued, and he started seeing these shorts coming and all that sort of stuff, and he just started chipping in money, right? So I think it's a bit of it's a parallel, right, to like cryptocurrency, right, where somebody ahead of time sees that it's going to blow up, like people who are buying Bitcoin at $1 or whatever, they start accumulating it up. Maybe it's volatile, sometimes they're up, sometimes they're down, but the groundswell sort of starts to build, and then the community just takes off at a certain point, and it's just like this unstoppable force.
It'd be exciting to see.
Yeah.
I'd like to see this happen with not just like honestly, if the Redditors just move from stock to stock and pump and dump it along the way, like just to wreak havoc on the finance world, I'd like to see.
But that's maybe like what we're going to be looking at here, right? Because I mean, it's too early to tell how it's all going to work out at this stage, but basically it's very likely that at the end of all this, some users, maybe some are going to lose the money, but at least some of them who've been in, like this guy or whoever else who've been in since the early days, they're going to come out of this with a few million, right? And if you have enough, like already with the groundswell of support, it's like it's more than enough money once it's all pulled together to actually like kick around with the big price on Wall Street. So now once you give them like round two, but they're already loaded up with like a few million each, they could probably just put 50% aside and be like, I'm sorted for life, and then the other 50% it's like back to the casino, to have like another round. It's gonna be
Wall
fucking
Street
crazy.
Bets just makes a Wall Street B2 with hookers and blow, with more hookers and more blow. I
That's
guess
that's what it's gonna be, though, right? Like it's like some sort of real life, like Wolf of Wall Street type. I mean, I guess the Wolf of Wall Street was based on a true thing as well, but it's like the next iteration of that, right? And it's pretty cool. So I've got a link here. Yeah. So this guy Chamith Palhipatia, he basically got on CNBC and was talking to them about what was all going on in the markets and stuff. And I recommend people have a look at this clip that I've got linked here. But it's just amazing where he's basically spitting facts, where he's like, look, the Wall Street has been rigged against retail investors for so long, and people have just been making so much money, and the hedge funds have the advantage because they can have all their information hidden about what trades they're doing and stuff like that. And of course, as soon as like the reason they can't just expose all this stuff publicly is because the internet hive mind's pretty fucking smart. So if they put all that information out there, then this kind of thing happens, where people collectively find where their tripwires are, is how he explains it, and put them to the torch, basically. And the host of it is incredible. They had this here is like a 3-minute clip, but they had like a half-hour segment that later got taken down for copyright, but it was pretty amazing watch, where the guy who's on the program, like the host, he knows he's in the wrong. It's one of those situations where he's like stumbling on air. He's like, his points don't really make sense, or they're not very coherent, right? Because basically there's no answer, right? That's the facts, and he's trying to put up this narrative of like, but I think the retail investors are going to get burnt, and then they're going to come crying to us because they didn't, they were unaware of what was going on. And the guy's saying to them, listen, do you understand, mate? You've got like 4 million people on Reddit who, they know what they're doing. This is not like an accident, they're switched on, like probably at least, some of them for sure are, finance professionals and all that. And once you multiply that with a whole mob and they just make one Reddit post and everyone goes, yeah, got it. this is the strategy. Like, that's all it takes, right?
Oh man, I think the most interesting thing to me is that CNBC is like, oh man. Well, first off, that CNBC's taken seriously at all, but they invited, I can't remember the guy's handle, but he was live earlier today and I was watching him. They invited a YouTuber on who normally talks about investments and stocks and Tesla and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they invited him on sometime last week to talk about Tesla. But then this morning, with all this GameStop stuff going on, they were like, oh, well, maybe we could switch it up. And so him on his live stream was like talking shit about them, essentially, and saying that they're so out of touch with reality that even despite the fact that he's talking shit about them on the live stream, he's still going to try to go onto the show so that he can get his point across about GameStop. But like, if did you see that Reddit had shut down Wall Street Bets for like the subreddit or that they at least locked it for a couple hours or something like that?
Yeah, this is it.
But just that it's like the big tech censorship thing, only with like retail investors in this case.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And so I mean, that can be like a killer app for crypto, right? Which is that obviously the appetite is there, right? Like the market knows, or people are fed up with this in a large extent, that the internet, I sort of think about it as like the internet, 15 or 20 years ago legitimately was this very like freewheeling type of like anonymous place, right? And then over time it's sort of become more controlled, where with the rise of social media and people are, over time people have become more comfortable with putting their actual name and face on the internet, and it's not all just like comments on the web that are just being deleted later. Now everything's like archived, and like people getting social media blow-ups, and politicians get called out for all this random shit that they did 15 years ago and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think I don't know, it's just to me like the pendulum has kind of maybe swung too far in that direction, and so now there's a bit of a correction starting, where with the rise of crypto and everything like that, it will be like maybe more of those options will come back into the mainstream, right? Like even like people now, 5 years ago, you asked, nobody knew what a VPN was. Like people just straight up didn't know unless you were in that niche, like VPN, what is that? But now people, oh yeah, VPN, they've got these ideas.
It's like an ad in every YouTube video for one now too.
Yeah, exactly. It's obviously striking a chord, right? Like people are getting more, paranoid is maybe not the right word, because maybe it's justified, right? And like Julian Assange, Edward Snowden, right? Like these there's been,
or even Elon Musk saying like use Signal.
Yeah.
Signal blowing up popular.
Exactly. There's just so many, the trend is definitely in that direction, and that awareness is like spreading around to people, and that's something that I think crypto can bring. Like it's just people have to have people need to be primed for it, and I think that's a really good thing. Is if you say to people, use this, blah blah, if it's not even a priority for them, or it's not in their mind to be thinking, what about my data security, and what about who can read my messages, and what's the point, then it all seems a bit like cloak and dagger. But if they know, if they understand, if they've had these problems, or they've seen this, like even recently I've had a load of people wanting to switch Messenger because they're like, WhatsApp was integrating with Facebook and I'm not happy about that, and stuff. So it's pretty amazing. I think like crypto's on the right side of history in that sense, and it's there at the right time. It just needs to be ready for people to really migrate into it, right?
Yeah, I've been saying for the past like 3 years now that shit's ready. It just needs to be used.
Yeah, but I think that, I mean, it is just, to me, it is just typical of an engineer heavy type of or a tech heavy type of community, that the mentality is a bit more build it and they will come, right? Like everybody's just sort of like busy trying to figure out the next issue, and that's kind of one of the ironies of this whole like scaling debate and everything, has been that, you know, it's just like so far in the future. Like it only came up as a critical issue at the time when it was like we've hit the limit, right? And people were sort of rabble rousing before that. But then once they got to the limit, even by the time it hit the limit though, it wasn't actually immediately a problem, because if the feed goes from 1 cent to 2 cent, nobody really notices a difference, right? So it's taken those extra couple of years for it to build up where now it's like $4 or $5 that it actually is starting to matter, and it will matter increasingly more going forward. But as far as
And the BTC folks still don't think it's even a problem.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
they're like that dog. I love that meme. They're the dog sitting in the flaming house, and they're like, "This is fine," you know. But I think what they don't realize is that it's not necessarily that they're sitting there. The dogs, they're all sitting in the house together, all saying this is fine, and they send their one transaction to their mate. It costs them $5, but they've both been in BTC for 3 years, and that's fine. But what they just don't, the unseen force is the flood of new users, which just looks at that house, looks in the window and goes, yep, not here, and they just go off to some other like crypto, you know. So it's not like necessarily that Bitcoin is going to shrink so much as everything else is just going to grow and expand around it, and by the time they wake up it'll be too late, probably. But yeah, I think crypto could really use like some more like UI design and UX design. That kind of stuff, I think, is going to start coming in. Like, I mean, some of the bigger exchanges kind of have it because they're a bit more like user facing. But I think, yeah, all the sort of great engineering work in the world doesn't really matter if you don't have like even things like the YouTube videos that we have now, where it's like, how does Bitcoin work? And you know, you can sort of get into that more or less as you want. And some people have made some with some, you know, diagrams and animations and shit like that, but that will increasingly get more and more like ramped up to like a modern standard of how easy and simple and clear everything should be, right?
yeah, and I'm hoping the barrier of entry for that kind of stuff gets lower and lower, like as the industry kind of progresses as well.
Yeah, I think it is over time.
And yeah, I think we see that with like, I think BCHD has done a good job trying to make it easier for just developers in general to communicate with the blockchain, and then things like the software development kits. Like I think bitcoin.com had, I don't know if it's still maintained, but I know they had one for a while. So that kind of thing I think is all just going to mature, and as it does, like hopefully those people who focus maybe too much on engineering solutions to problems that might not even be real problems. Just focus on like, you know, more front-facing experiences. Like, how do we pick up the first user? How do we retain that user? Like, what engages that user? And how do we integrate that in a daily like a flow? So it's not like, oh, I have to do this thing, or I'm participating. This is like a conscious, like, oh, I'm using my cryptocurrency for this thing. How does it just flow with their day-to-day life? Yeah,
that it just plugs into the system, or it all just runs in the background. And I think that's what we'll see. You know, it really is. It's like all of this stuff that's being built. It's all like the pipes. It's all like the underground like plumbing for everything. And then probably it just needs a few more sort of like, what I'm imagining is those Super Mario pipes, you know, that like come out of the ground. You can just jump in them and go to the alternate little reality. It needs a few more of those pipes, and I guess we'll start to see that. And in some senses, that's where the split of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, I think, can actually be quite beneficial, in the sense that because the Bitcoin community has isolated itself into this loop of like, we're just all getting rich and nobody needs to even use our currency, is they're not even competing on that field anymore. They're not even going for that market or that aspect. And that's where Bitcoin Cash, because people have a bit more of that mindset, they can maybe think, oh well, we've got to make, you know, they are working on those problems. How do we make this attractive and interesting and usable and everything? And again, that's another topic that I definitely want to explore in more detail. But yeah, like just to get back to this Wall Street bet stuff, I don't know how much time you got, but probably don't want to go on like forever. You know, we're already at more than an hour. But anyway, basically, so then they shut down the subreddit for a little while, and then with the Robin Hood is this investing app that a lot of people were using to buy GME and buy these stocks on to screw the hedge fund, and now then the app has Robinhood, which a lot of people were using, and the other ones as well, like eToro and 212 and whatever. They prevented users from purchasing more of these stocks. So you could still sell, but you just couldn't buy more, which is the most like blatant case of like, and it's not like a tech problem or anything. It's like we have deliberately disabled the buy button on this, even though we are a share company and that should be our job. The more people that want to buy, the better, right? But they just like disabled it. And I have another slide here where it's just like sort of, that the hedge fund are actually part owners or they're related to the app. So obviously the order came down like, you guys have got to stop this. Like we're getting murdered up here. Please switch off the buy button. And they did, but now it's going to turn into lawsuits and it's going to be a whole thing, right?
Yeah, I saw a couple users claiming that not only did it block them from buying, but it also like automatically sold their positions for them.
Holy fuck, that's real bad.
Yeah. I'd be furious
if they've got proof of that. Like, oof. But the problem in this case as well though is that it's not even necessarily like whoopsie by the app and by the company. They know what they're doing, but it's cheaper for them to have a class action lawsuit with 4 million people complaining about their stock than it is to pay this short squeeze of 140%, which has now gone up to 250% of all the stocks, at potentially $10,000 or $100,000 or $1 million. Like I don't think it's going to hit $1 million, but potentially, right? In a world where all the Redditors or all the investors were just fanatically like, we're not going to sell, right? So then there's just been more of that today. I've got a bit of a screenshot here of like the GameStop price that I took. I don't know when this was, about like an hour ago or something like that, and a couple hours ago maybe. And yeah, it's just been like up, to 400 and then down to 119 and then back up and forth. It's just this live battle like between the hedge funds are basically still screwed. It does, even whether it's between 200 and 2,000, it's rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic for them because they still have to buy back twice, 2.5 times as many shares as actually exist, and the Redditors have already bought up like such a huge percentage of them. But it's still just like fascinating to watch this like financial waves crash basically.
So because it's a publicly traded stock, the people that own, like, is there a way to view essentially like the heaviest bag holders of GME right now?
Yeah, I think there is. I don't know. We'd have to look that up. But what I do know is that like in a standard publicly traded company, you will have disclosures of like who is the biggest shareholders and stuff like that. And it's like the founder or the guy who they put in as the CEO, who is all part of the story. People can look that up if they're interested, what he was doing and how that sort of led to this whole meteoric rise. I don't know the details, right? But I think he has like 13%. And then there was a couple of other like, companies that were the backers or the investors of this company, and they also had certain percentages. And I think the retail investors, so it's like the Redditors or whoever liked GameStop, who was just buying on the open market, I think that was like about 54% or something like that of the total amount. So like obviously I'm pretty sure it was a majority share. It was like pretty close to that. But then whoever those people are, like the CEO and stuff that I mentioned, if he had 13%, he's now like a billionaire, right? He's chilling. If his stock's gone up 100x and he already had 13% or more. So, and I think all of those major shareholders and stuff, they're zipped lip, because as soon as they say anything, it can only end badly for them. If they're like, the SEC is like, you're manipulating the stock up, or you're manipulating the stock down, or you're like spreading false rumors, or you're insider trading, or whatever.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Like they are definitely not going to comment while the Reddit army is on the march. Otherwise, they're seen as like, suddenly you're at the head of the throng, you're like charging them up.
Can you imagine if the head of GameStop just put out a tweet that was like, we're overvalued, and then shorts his own stock and just doubles his money right then and
That would be fucking crazy. It would be amazing. He'd just like, sure, yeah. Well, then he'd be probably going to jail with the rest of them though. So I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, maybe it's some universe, you know, like I mean, even if they just came out and they were like, we're definitely undervalued right now. I mean, there's so many things like I don't know all the ramifications, but because the company has grown so much, like I saw some people suggesting on Reddit, like GameStop now has a ton of like equity in the market because their price gone up. They could start acquiring companies, right? So they could be like on the back of this sudden surge, just like, oh, we're going to buy up a few of our like smaller competitors and then actually sort of try and cobble together enough business to justify maybe not this valuation, but like, you know, some sort of valuation, right? Which is also,
that'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a bit of an angle to the story, right? Is that there's like, it is sort of this like struggling retailer versus the giant market like type story. Like I think the fact that it is GameStop adds to it, right? If it was you know, scumbag lawyers corp who happened to be the ones that had been over leveraged, you know, and where the opportunity was, I can't see it as, you know, catching as much fire in the public imagination, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's definitely contributed. And then I've got a bit of a quick slide here about this was the Volkswagen went through a similar thing with the short squeeze, and this is like sort of how the graph looked, right? And then this is sort of the theory of, okay, well, up until the point of this podcast, this is about how it looks. So in theory, you know, the big boom should be tomorrow, Friday, when the shorts come in, or over the weekend on Monday and Tuesday, like as the shorts start to liquidate. So yeah, I mean, as of recording right now, it's Thursday night, 10:30. So we'll be in for an interesting time. We'll have to see how it all plays out on the next one. So yeah, I guess the last point about this, probably as we're getting close to wrapping up the show, would just be talking about all of that. We already done it a bit, but just in the bigger sense of like tying crypto in with this GameStop stuff, like what your thoughts are. I mean, for me, it ties together a bunch of things, right? Like obviously it's very similar to crypto in that it's all this sort of internet funded like hype and very viral, and as all the users flood in, you know, you can just see that kind of same event happening with Bitcoin Cash, right? In a different universe, or maybe, you know, a year or two down the line, if things went slightly differently, you know, that instead it would be like Bitcoin Cash, and once everybody got on the same page, it would just pump up. And especially with this, go on.
I could see this exact thing happening with Bitcoin Cash. Like you have Blockstream and co shorting BCH, and every time the price of BCH like rises against BTC, they end up selling whatever they have to try and bring that price back down. I just see the exact fundamentals for, not exact, let's say, but I just see a lot of parallels and similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, some people do have that, like, who knows? I mean, that's another reason why when people say, but Bitcoin, if you think Bitcoin versus Bitcoin Cash, you think Bitcoin Cash is the one, well, look at this shit, like, look at this graph, like, Bitcoin Cash has just crashed against Bitcoin and just, like, fucked for, like, this whole time, like, why hasn't it really gone anywhere? And it's like, that stuff takes a long time to work out of the market. If you think at the time of the fork, everybody who believed in BTC had just as much BCH, and probably a lot of them sold it straight away, and then some of them sold it a bit later, and then a bit later, and then a bit later, and it just takes so long for all those coins to filter off out of the market from people who are not actually really believing in the currency anymore. But ultimately, of course, every time somebody sells a coin, it gets distributed to somebody who is more willing to hold on to it, right? At least at that point in time. And so over time, the base just like builds up, you know, it's like layers in a brick wall, where the reason that the price is at whatever price it is because you can't find anyone who will sell lower, right? And so as the coins like spread out over time, subject to the other changing conditions of the market, there's just more and more Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is just being hoarded. So yeah, I mean, I think that's why scalability is such an important thing, because you don't get to pick the viral moment, right? It happens when it happens, and when it happens, you want to be ready for it so that it can just power off and be a huge thing. And that's where Bitcoin seems to have come a bit unstuck, in that with this latest bubble, it kicked off and it did, and I mean, again, it was still very like speculative, but they're not converting a lot of those users to long-term people that actually want to use the currency, because it's just too expensive. And so that's it. Like Bitcoin can't really, or maybe it can go through another bubble in terms of the price, but in terms of like exponential growth of transactions or users, it just can't. So just interesting. I don't know, do you have anything else you want to bring up just before we wrap up the show here? Anything that's been on your mind with the Bitcoin Cash community or GameStop or anything? Shout outs? Do you want to shout out your YouTube channel or anything like that?
No, I have a list of people I would like to shout out.
Hell.
This is a unfinished list. But this is everyone that's donated to the dev fund so far.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I saw it. Like, for people who don't know, you've got a bit of a fund, like you can talk about it. It's like Flipstarter, right?
Yeah. So, I've wanted to be more active in the development space, and try and build some of those front-facing apps that we were talking about. But every time I've tried to learn programming to any extent on my own, I've always felt like I needed that curriculum or some kind of like, here's goal A, goal B, like the building to get to wherever level of knowledge I need to get to. And so I decided after this most recent hackathon that I was going to go, and I make dick fuck all minimum wage right now, so I figured, hey, I'm gonna see if some of these people could help cover my education, essentially, because my main goal is to help contribute back to the ecosystem, so maybe it'd work out for the both of us. So I set a 20 BCH goal with a 7-month timeline, with the thought, like, it won't get funded, first off. Secondly, even if it doesn't get funded in that 7 months, I've personally given myself 12, where I'll save up little bits, and worst case scenario, I'll pay for it all myself by this time next year. But it's been only 8 days now, and we're at 82% funded.
Fuck yeah.
So, I'm like, it feels really fast for me. And I'm so appreciative. Like, it's weird, I kind of like poked at my family a little bit about it, because like I've never met anyone that's donated to the fund in real life. But like my family hasn't helped. I love my family. Again, this is just teasing, but they haven't really financially helped pay for education at all. So anyway, and I think part of the reason how I got here was the whole January thing for myself, where I was like, I'm going to live off this for a month. And I realized I can do that, and it's not that complicated. So let's take it the step further. Massive shout out to the man, Roger Veer himself, and also a happy belated birthday to him. I think his birthday was yesterday.
Happy birthday, Roger.
And then we have Molecular, Huck Finn, BTC Fork, ZQuest, Josh, thank you very much. Bitcoin Out Loud, John, thank you. Imaginary username, Pooker, I don't know. George Donnelly and bitcoincash.site, thank you. And Omar and Bitcoin Boogaloo, thank you very much. So grateful, and I'll try and keep everyone updated. My admissions interview is tomorrow, so fingers crossed.
Well, yeah, best of luck with that, dude. I'm sure you'll kill it. Sounds like, it's what you want to get done, right? So that kind of passion that pays off. I'm sure you've done your prep. So in that spirit. So I'm gonna wrap up the show with saying thank you to some of my own donators from last week. I just had the QR code and got a few donations. I think about 4 or 5 And they were all anonymous, and yeah, same as you. Like, I kind of like that. I mean, if anybody donates to this podcast and wants a shout out, or you can send me a message. But you know, like I did feel also a little bit like, well, you know, it's kind of the crypto vibe, you know, that it's all synonymous, or you know, people just, the money comes in, and in some ways that it even is amazing when you get those tips, you know, and it's just like someone in the world thought that this was like valuable, you know. It really adds a lot of
warms my heart.
Yeah, it really adds a lot of encouragement. And I think, you know, if we can, that kind of, yeah, again, it sort of comes back to what I was saying about the community, with people just like rallying together, and even just having a little bit of that money flowing around in the community, where if I, you know, donate to you, for instance, then like that's BCH to BCH, right? You're not cashing that out for like, you know, USD or anything like that. And so then that builds up. That's the most important thing, is to build up that crypto internal economy, and then as that slowly expands, more money flows in from the fiat currency and doesn't leave, and it just builds up till it becomes a whole goods and services type economy. So yeah, to anybody listening, you know, if you can get paid in Bitcoin Cash, or you can ask people like about that, you know, that's the real thing. Don't try and convert people to Bitcoin Cash. Don't say, hey, this is Bitcoin Cash, is the greatest thing. Just say, hey, listen, can you pay me in Bitcoin Cash? And like that speaks volumes, right? Like, people want something when everyone else wants it, not when they're trying to give it away, right? So, you know, be that person, say, pay me in Bitcoin Cash. Like, I don't even want your garbage fiat anymore. Don't force it. If they don't want to do it, well, that's fine. You can always buy it on an exchange yourself. But yeah, anyway, in the spirit of all that, I thought, what is some innovative stuff I could do with this donation money? So I've got this plan. So the first 3 people to comment on this YouTube video with I love BCH, like it's written on the screen here, I love BCH, and a Bitcoin Cash address, and I'll send you 5 milli Bitcoin Cash. So I thought that was kind of interesting, because it's like a reverse crowdfunder, right? Like, instead of you know, usually in the comments people are always like, subscribe to my Patreon, or like whatever. Instead, it's the other way around. It's like, you can pay your listeners for listening, right? So I don't know where that's going to go, or if I'm going to continue that, but definitely at least once I want to give that a go. And it could be a weird self-funding thing, right, where people who are donating to me because they like the content, then that money flows out to my listeners, and that creates, you know, more of an economy there. I don't know, right? But yeah.
Real quick, 2 things before we go. Have you tried the shareable links in the bitcoin.com?
No, I haven't, but that is similar idea, right?
I think that's exactly what you're looking for here, yeah. We also use that for the hackathon, and people are quick to grab it. People will accuse you of not putting value in the links, because other people will grab that shit quick. And the second thing is, one of the things that I did when I announced that I was doing meetups was I just made a paper wallet and held the whole QR code right on the video, and I was like, if you grab it, like if you can scan it and go, good, it's yours, have fun.
Yeah, all right. I'll have to I mean, the way I had it with the 3 my plan was that if people commented, like, then I can pick out the first 3, right? Otherwise it's literally just like, if I just put up like a QR code, the first person could just grab all 3, right? There's nothing stopping them from doing that either. So whereas they comment in the comments, I can at least know they're a legit person, and they watch the episode till the end, right? Didn't announce that shit at the start. So there you go. We'll have to see about that. And then got a QR code as well here at the end for. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't really necessarily need the money in terms of like paying my bills or anything, but whatever cash comes in, if people like this podcast, it does encourage me to do it more, although I'm going to do more anyway. But it is kind of cool, and definitely a few millibits adds up, especially if the price then skyrockets at some point. Well, suddenly can be hosting some cool events, or there's a bit more of a budget there. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for coming on the show, dude. It's been
very much appreciated.
Been good.
Thanks for having me.
Been real good. So yeah, might leave it there, and get this one loaded up now with a nice GameStop clickbait title or whatever, so everyone can see it's real topical. All right.
like a stomp meme thumbnail.
Yeah, I haven't started making those troll, you know, what are they called? The like the pictures, you know, the what are they called? The little clickable the
Yeah,
thumbnails. That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't started making the thumbnails yet, but maybe I'll have to get. I don't really want this to be clickbaity, but on the other hand, it's clickbait because it works, right? So, you know, it's
It's fun.
spreading the message. All right, cool. Well, we'll leave it there. Until next time.